أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. His Excellency the Governor of Kaduna State, represented by the Honorable Commissioner of Education, His Royal Highness the Emir of Kaduna, represented by the Kurayen Kaduna, His Royal Highness the Emir of Daura, Allah Kara Sarki Lafiya, the Vice Chancellor, Umar Musa Yar'Adua University, my senior colleague, an elder brother, and indeed a mentor, because when I was doing my PhD, Professor Shehu Salihu Muhammad was the Dean of the Students' Affairs in Usman Danfodio University, so the Vice Chancellor was my Dean. I must respect my teacher, Professor Jafaru Kaura, my teacher and mentor also. While the Vice Chancellor was the Dean Student Affairs when I was doing my PhD, Professor Jafaru Makau Kaura was the Deputy Vice Chancellor of the university. The Chief Judge, sorry please, I breached the protocol, but I must be forgiven. We university people are poor in protocol anyway. Other distinguished personalities that are here, the head of the Department of Islamic Studies that is organizing this conference, and members of the local organizing committee, distinguished professors, scholars and academics, most respected students, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, it has been said that to whom much is given, much is expected. In this regard, I would say that about whom much is said, much is also expected. So the person that read my recitation has said a lot of things about me that might have raised your hopes and expectations about me. But please lower your expectations so that you don't be disappointed. I follow the footsteps of the Vice Chancellor in congratulating the Department of Islamic Studies for organizing this very important conference. I congratulate them on the initiative, much as I also congratulate them on the thought and choice of the topic, which is timely and apt. And I hope the department will keep it up so that since it calls it annual, we hope next year the conference will be conducted and in subsequent years. Please avoid a situation whereby you organize conference this year and it takes you another 5-7 years before you organize another one. The issues are there, too numerous to be addressed. And therefore, the conferences will not be too many. Mr. Vice Chancellor, Your Excellency the Governor, the topic, Contemporary Global Challenges and Crises in the Muslim World, although, as it has been said, is timely, but in a way is complex. And I must say that I am humbled to have been chosen to be the keynote speaker, especially where my teacher, Professor Jafaru Kaura, would be a lead paper. The reverse should have been the case, actually. In any case, I also wish to appreciate my sincere and profound gratitude. I wish to express my sincere and profound appreciation for being given this privilege to come and present the keynote speech on this important topic and this historic conference. Historic in the sense that it is the first conference that the international conference that the department is organizing. This I consider a rare privilege. I thank the department and I thank the university for that. My own sense of the topic is that here we are in a world that is inundated by too many challenges. Unexpectedly, as I would demonstrate, expectedly, Muslims are on call. Muslims are the ones expected to salvage the world and to rescue it from the challenges. But unfortunately, the Muslim world is bedeviled by a number of crises which may hamper it from playing the rightful role it is expected to play of salvaging the world and redeeming it and rescuing it. Therefore, what are these crises? How do we address them so that as Muslims we answer the call of rescuing the world and redeeming it from the challenges it's facing? Mr. Vice Chancellor, this is my own sense of the topic. The outline of my presentation, therefore, is like this. In the introduction, I made an attempt to have an overview of the situation of the Muslim nations and the crises and challenges that are facing them. What could be responsible for these crises and challenges? And then we try to make sense of the global challenges. Now, beginning with the Muslim world, Mr. Vice Chancellor, I begin by presenting or projecting the potentials of the Muslim world. The Muslim world has certain potentials. These potentials can be divided into two broad dimensions. There are potentials that are based on divine providence. Divine providence conferred on the Muslim Ummah. And there are potentials in terms of natural resources and natural endowments. Now, studying this, let us first of all begin by the potentials of the Muslim world that are based on divine providence. And one of those potentials based on divine providence is the crowning or the appointing of the Muslim Ummah as the Ummah Khairiyah. Ummah Khairiyah. That is the best of communities and the best of nations raised for mankind. This is a potential conferred on the Muslim world based on divine providence. Allah says in Surah to Ali Imran, that is chapter 3, verse 110, Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas, ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhawna anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah. Al-Ayah. You Muslims are the best nations brought out for mankind, commanding what is righteous. What is it? What do you do to deserve being the best of nations? What do you do to deserve being the best of communities? You are the best of communities because you enjoin goodness and you prohibit wickedness or evil. This is the first potential of the Muslim world based on divine providence. The second potential, Mr. Vice Chancellor, is that we are the ummah of the golden mean, not given to extremism in any way. We're not given to extremism in any way. Ummatan wasatan. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونُ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. Thus we have made you a median, a just community, that you will be witnesses over people. Ummah that is moderate in all sense of the word, in all dimensions of life, in all manifestations of life. This is an ummah that is moderate. It doesn't give preference to spirituality to the detriment of materialism and vice versa. It doesn't give much prominence to privacy at the detriment of public life and vice versa. It doesn't give prominence to the individual to the detriment of the community and vice versa. It doesn't give preference to the world against the hereafter and vice versa. وَابْتَغِ فِي مَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ وَلَا تَبْغِ الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. This is an ummah of the golden means. Ummah that doesn't emphasize permissivism, extreme permissivism and hedonism as against, rigidity and extreme, celibacy, and so on and so forth. This is another qualification. This is another potential that equips the ummah with the necessary qualification to redeem the world from its present situation of crisis. We're witnessing in the world situations like this, extremes in a number of ways which we shall demonstrate. Again, another potential of the ummah conferred on it on the basis of divine providence is that we are ummatu shahada. Ummatu shahada in the sense that we are the ones that shall bear witness upon the whole of mankind. Litakunu shuhada'a ala nas. This is a potential. Now, having said this, Mr. Vice Chancellor, these divine potentials conferred on the ummah necessarily create expectations, hopes, and responsibility. We bear a lot of expectations as an ummah. The world expects us to take leadership in the world. The world expects us to redeem it from its misery. The world expects us to bring happiness to the world. The world has a lot of hopes in us. While there are hopes and expectations, there is a responsibility. We bear a responsibility to the world. We bear responsibility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We bear responsibility to the world that we would engender justice and happiness in the world. Just as it was said by Rubai ibn Amir, one of the Muslim armies of among the Sahaba, who confronted Rustum, the commander of the Persian army. When Rustum asked him, "What is it that brought you to our land?" he said to him, "Nahanu qawmun ibta'athana Allah linukhrij al-ibada min ibadati al-ibad ila ibadati rabbil ibad wa min jawri al-adyan إلى عدل الإسلام ومن ضيق الدنيا إلى سعتها. This is our responsibility. This is our responsibility, that we are a people raised by Allah to emancipate or redeem the slaves of Allah from the worship of fellow slaves to the worship of the Lord of the slaves, from the tyranny of false religions to the justice of Islam, and from the misery of this world to its prosperity and happiness. This brings us to the end of our discussion on the potentials conferred on us by divine providence. Mr. Vice Chancellor, Your Excellency, the Muslim world has another dimension of potentials, and these are potentials in terms of the natural resources that Allah has enriched the Muslim world with. These resources can be explained in terms of human resources, human resource potentials, natural resource potentials, and as a result of the two combined, the first two combined, we have all the political potentials to lead the world. We have all the economic potentials to become economically viable and strong. And we have military potentials to become militarily dominant in the world. Now, what are these potentials? See, Your Excellency, the Vice Chancellor, the Muslim world represents 25 as a religious and faith community, as a civilizational community. The Muslim world represents 25% of the entire global humanity. This is great. This is great when you consider that there are different civilizations. The Hindu civilization, the Buddhist civilization, the Confucius civilization, the Euro-Christian civilization, or you can say the Judo-Christian civilization, and so on and so forth, or what you may call Western civilization. Now, this is a great potential. The landmass of the Muslim world separates across 57 countries of the world. 57 countries of the world. Birth rate. In terms of birth rate, the Muslim world is the most fertile in terms of, fertility. The Muslim world is the most fertile. Fertility in Europe has gone down as a direct repercussion and consequence of birth control. The European countries have faced population crisis as a result of birth control. That is why, although they have this tendency for supremacy, they have this tendency for racism, but at the same time, they have to open their doors for migrants to come, because they don't have people to work in the industries. They don't have people to work in the military as a result of population crisis. The Muslim world is not facing population crisis. Mr. Vice Chancellor, Your Excellency, population has never been a crisis. Population has always been a resource. Human population has always been a resource. Population would only be a crisis if you leave the population and abandon it uneducated, unmoralized, and so on and so forth. When you have lots of uneducated population, then you have a crisis at hand. But population has never been a crisis. How could the human potential, the human resource is the biggest resource? Because the whole world has been rendered to man. وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. So human resource can never be a crisis. How can human resource be a crisis when Allah has said, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْنَاهُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. How can human population be a crisis? So this is a potential for the Muslim population. And at the same time, about 80% of this Muslim population is living in the Muslim countries. 20% of the Muslim population are living in non-Muslim countries. When you take, for example, India, India is a non-Muslim country, but you know, the Muslim population of India put together is bigger than the population of the entire Arab world. The Muslim population in India, Muslims in China, Muslim in Thailand, Muslim in Brazil, in the Americas, I mean, and so on and so forth. The world's Muslim population is expected, according to the Pew research conducted, and that was way back in 2010. After 14 years, the figures might have changed tremendously. But then the world's Muslim population is expected to increase by about 35% in the next 20 years, rising from 1.6 billion in 2010 to 2.2 billion. Muslims are going to dominate the world numerically. This is a great potential, Mr. Chairman. The Muslim world is not only numerically strong, the Muslim world is rich in economic resources, playing a vital role in the economy. 70% of the global oil is located in Muslim nations. 70% of the global oil is located in Muslim nations. Nearly 50% of other natural resources are all deposited in Muslim nations. 45% of the agricultural land, arable land, with river system for irrigation are all located in the Muslim world. Yet, unfortunately, this introduces us to the aspect of the crisis of the Muslim world, although we shall come and discuss it exclusively. The Muslim world represents only 5% of the world GDP. In spite of these potentials, in spite of the big human resource, in spite of the natural resources endowed to the Muslim world put together only represents 5% of the world GDP. It has the share of the Muslim world in global revenue. Mr. Vice Chancellor, unfortunately, the share of the Muslim world in global revenue is just about 7.5%. In spite of the human capital, in spite of the natural resources, the entire GDP, the entire GDP of OIC states put together is less than the GDP of just one country, that is Japan. Let me skip this and perhaps talk about the challenges. Now, having discussed the potentials of the Muslim world, let us try to make sense of the challenges facing the world. The challenges facing the world, Your Excellency, Mr. Vice Chancellor, also can be discussed from two dimensions or perspectives. There is the general manifestations of the challenges. The general manifestation of the challenges are represented in two things. Number one, there is a global misery. The world is going through misery. Happiness index in the world is too low. This is a challenge. The second is that the world is full of contradictions and ironies. Full of contradictions and ironies. This is from the general dimension. From the specific dimension, Mr. Vice Chancellor, number one, we see geopolitical tensions and their spillover effects of violence. We're living in a world that is pervaded by violence, wickedness, too many massless and senseless killings going on in the world. This is a challenge. How can we tame this phenomenon of too many massless and senseless killings going on in the world? In the Nigerian situation, the situation is just terribly ugly. Another manifestation of the challenge is we have globalization. And with globalization, we have the dominance of liberal democracy. With the dominance of liberal democracy, we are seeing dominance of the liberal culture. The liberal culture that has contributed to the accentuation of moral bankruptcy. We are living in a world that is full of moral perversion, moral lewdness, licentiousness, and moral apathy. You know what is going on in the world today. I don't need to give any graphic examples. But however, the latest unfortunate thing that has come to visit the world as a result of the dominance of liberal democracy and liberal culture is the phenomenon of the LGBTQ. The phenomenon of the LGBTQ. And now the metropolitan countries, the so-called superpowers, are trying by all means to coerce, to force other countries of the world to legitimize LGBTQ. Your Royal Highness, LGBTQ means the legitimization of lesbianism, homosexuality, bisexuality, transgender, QI, and, you know, intersexual cultures. And if birth control had created population crisis in Europe, LGBTQ will completely decimate humanity. LGBTQ will annihilate and completely destroy humanity. By its very potentials, LGBTQ means that there wouldn't be procreation. A situation whereby man would marry man, woman would marry woman. Or a man would think that God brought him to be a man in the world by mistake. He was supposed to be a woman. Therefore, he would go and get some surgical transformation to become a woman. Or a situation whereby a woman would think that it was a mistake. Nature had made a mistake by making her to be a woman. In her own interest, she wants to become a man. Who should prevent her from doing that? Why should any country say that if you want to become a man while you are a woman, or when you want to marry a fellow man, who should prevent you from doing that? Liberal democracy is fast propagating this and is trying to impose this on the world. This is a terrible challenge. And if we think that this is happening in Europe only, we may be deceiving ourselves. It is right here with us. It is right here with us. By queer, it means if you want to transform yourself into some form of, you know, animal. Like I was seeing some 3 weeks ago, a lady in America who had turned herself into a dog, and her owner was pulling her by the neck, and she was moving on her knees and backing. Wai ita kariya ce. Ita wai kariya ce, ta zama kariya. Wai haka take so. So this kind of liberal thinking is being propagated. And you know, the European countries in November, they called a convention of countries and saying that they should all sign an agreement to the effect that they would give LGBTQ rights in their own countries. وَدُّوا لَوْ تَكْفُرُونَ كَمَا كَفَرُوا وَتَكُونُونَ سَوَاءً. You know, this present American president, when he was sworn in, and he appointed his own ministers. When he was presenting his own ministers, one of the ministers, when he was presented, said, okay, I am happy, I'm glad to present my wife in the eyes of the world. And when he invited the wife, it was a fellow man like him. And they don't have the shame to show this to the world. With free market economy dominant in the world, Mr. Chairman, with free market economy and the growth of economic inequality, we are in a world, like I was saying, The challenges are either manifested in misery or in contradictions and ironies. With free market economy, we are living in a world more affluent than ever before. A world that is more affluent than ever before. Mai martaba sarki ya sani saboda he is the oldest, Allah kara ma sarki lafiya. A ƙasan nan 60 years back, many mutane da yawa warki suke sawa. Haka ne ko mai martaba sarki? But today, although we complain, isn't it? But today, most of you that are here have at least not less than 5 sets of clothes. All of you. So the world is more affluent than before. Whereas in this world that is more affluent than before, millions are dying of hunger and disease. This is the contradiction and the irony. Although we are living in a world that is more affluent than before, but more people are dying of hunger and disease. The rich are becoming richer as a result of free market economy, whereas the poor are becoming poorer. The Bretton Woods institutions are ensuring that richer nations are becoming richer. Who are the Bretton Woods institutions? The World Bank, the IMF, the World Trade Organization, and others. They are ensuring that rich countries become richer and poor countries become poorer. It is being said that 1%. 5 minutes. Okay. It has been said that 1% of the world population today controls more than 80% of the world riches and wealth. We're living in a world in which man has landed on the moon, but man has not been able to bring happiness to himself. Ironically, Mr. Chairman, while man has landed on the moon, but man has continued to destroy his own environment. So we are facing global environmental crisis and climate crisis in the world. But man has landed on the moon. What an irony. We are living in a world, Mr. Chairman, of technological disruptions. A world in which time and space have virtually been demystified by transport and information and communication technologies. We have gone beyond information and communication technology. The world is talking about digital technology today. No, we have gone beyond that. The world is talking about disruptive technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, big data analytica, Mr. Chairman. But unfortunately, it is in this world where friendship and kinship have kept diminishing. You would be in the same room with your family, each holding his or her own phone. She will be communicating with somebody from China. He will be communicating with somebody from Saudi Arabia. You, the head of the family, may be communicating with some other person from Lagos. You will be sitting in the same room, physically together, but you see, in terms of mind, you're all worlds apart. Contradictions. I've been shown that it's time, or I have, but then let me make this point. This is a world inundated with too much talk about human rights. A world is inundated by too much talk about freedom, whereas tyranny and oppression and injustice are the order of the day. The case of Gaza is in point in this regard. While women and children and the old are just being mercilessly killed, the whole world, the entire world, in this world, where there is too much talk about human rights, where there is too much talk about justice and freedom, but unfortunately, the entire world has watched helplessly. It has not been able to do anything up to this moment. A world swayed by crass materialism, greed, while spirituality keeps waning. And we are witnessing in the world the upsurge of humanism and atheism. That is the rejection of Allah. Many youth, as a result of their interaction with the social media and with the internet, many Muslim youth are taken to humanism. What is humanism? The glorification of human capacity. That man can be the arbiter of his own destiny. That man doesn't need revelation to know the right or the wrong. You can know the right or the wrong because of your capacity. You don't need God. And atheism, that is the complete rejection of God. Mr. Chairman, Your Excellency, this ideology is fast spreading in our rooms, in our houses. Children may be going to Islamia school. They may be going to, you may be carrying them to the mosque, but they don't believe in Allah. Because they have more time with the internet than they have with you. I refer us to a research report on the growth of atheism in Nigeria by Al Jazeera. You can Google it. The title of the research is Nigeria's Undercover Atheists. Nigeria's Undercover Atheists. They interviewed nearly about a dozen Muslim youth and some few Christians. So most of them in Kano, Katsina, and other northern countries, northern cities. Only one of them was mentioned with his true name, but most of them were mentioned with pseudonames. Their true names were hidden because most of them confessed that their parents did not know that they don't believe in Allah. Google it. Nigeria's Undercover Atheists, reported by Al Jazeera. And Mr. Chairman, I think this is the most fundamental challenge we are facing in the world today. The diminution of Tawheed and the upsurge of Shirk as epitomized in humanism and atheism. The Vice Chancellor is saying I should wind up. I would wind up by saying that I have come to a point where I have presented problems and I have not gone to discuss the solutions. But alhamdulillah, the paper is going to be presented to you. You will get the solutions. But then when you take all this into consideration, Muslims must rise up to the most important challenge, and that is the challenge of knowledge. Knowledge, both Islamic knowledge and conventional knowledge. We must make sure that we become much more committed to knowledge. We become much more committed to the path of knowledge. Unfortunately, we are the ones that have legacy of knowledge. But unfortunately, we are lagging behind. I haven't gone to discuss the crisis. The crisis as manifested here. But I have to stop at this point. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وسبحانك اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.